The Iowa Revenge Tour is coming. The Iowa Revenge Tour is coming. And if you're an Iowa wrestling fan, you probably can't wait for this. I mean, you also may be wondering, what is the Revenge Tour? What does that mean? What does that mean? Well, before I talk about that, I do want to talk about the sponsor of this video, Be Superior Wrestling, a great wrestling brand. I have a link to them right in the description below, but telling you a little bit about them. They're a premium and limited wrestling brand streetwear company where you can wear hoodies. They have shirts. They have headbands, a great wrestling brand company. You may want to check that out. Now, the one thing I want to talk about with the Iowa Tour is Iowa has a few duels coming up, some of their toughest duels in a few years, and Iowa has lost to every single one of these teams. Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, and Oklahoma State. The last time Iowa wrestled all four of these teams, they lost. They lost to Oklahoma State last year. They lost to Michigan the year before, as well as Penn State and Ohio State, which is the last time they wrestled in 2018. But I'm going to get into that and talk about the Iowa Revenge Tour. Now, the first team that Iowa has coming up in this season is Ohio State. And Iowa versus Ohio State will be happening on January 24th. The last time they met was January of 2018, whenever Iowa lost 22-12. Now, this was a very interesting match because Ohio State actually broke Iowa's 24 conference road wins streak. They were on a streak. They were wrestling really well on the road, but they lost to Ohio State. Now, big things during this match. I mean, some of the biggest wins was when Spencer Lee beat NATO. That was a massive win for Spencer Lee, propelling him all the way to the top, as well as Sorensen getting a win, Kemmerer getting a win, and Marinelli. Now, of course, Ohio State, some of their biggest wins were Pletcher and McKenna, as well as Miles Martin, Colin Moore, and of course, that's when they had Kyle Snyder in the mix. Now, interestingly enough, there are going to be some great matches this time, too. We're going to see DeSanto versus Decatur, Murin versus Pletcher, top 1 versus number 3 ranked wrestlers, Lugo versus Sasso. Which the last time they wrestled, Sasso won at Midlands, which could be a potentially interesting match. And please let me know as I'm going through this, who will Iowa beat out of all these teams? Because this year is the year I think they could win all 4. If they win all 4, the Revenge Tour is complete. Now, the next match that these guys have is on January 31st. January 31st of this year is when Penn State and Iowa goes down. They will be wrestling at Iowa, just like they will be wrestling Ohio State at Iowa. The last time they wrestled, they lost 28-13. A pretty upsetting duel for the Hawkeyes. Some big matches during this. Possibly the biggest was whenever Marinelli beat Vincenzo Joseph. I mean, the number 1 ranked wrestler in Censo, and Marinelli came in and beat him. That was huge. The last 2 times these guys have wrestled, Marinelli has won. We're going to see that match again at the end of January. The last matchup was also one of the biggest college duels in wrestling history, the highest attended in history, one of the highest attended in wrestling history. I think one of the most at the Bryce Jordan Center. Now, we also saw Zane Rutherford versus Brandon Sorensen. Mark Hall come out, get a nice big pin as well, followed by Bo Nickel. And then we also saw a big upset in Shakur Rashid versus Cash Wilkie. But this year, while we're seeing a couple of those guys wrestle again, we're going to see DeSanto versus RBY, which DeSanto is already 2-0 against RBY in the history of them wrestling, but we're going to see that again. Murin versus Nick Lee. I mean, 41 just seems to be the weight that Iowa is just wrestling everybody tough at. Caleb Young versus Berge, and Kemmerer versus Hall are a couple other matches we could see. Are they going to beat Penn State this year? I think there's a chance. Now, talking about the next matchup that Iowa has to beat, and that's Michigan. The last time they wrestled, Iowa was number 4 and Michigan was number 7 in the country. This was actually in January of 2018, so 2 years ago, but the next time they're wrestling is in February. We could see Pat Lugo versus Kanan Storr wrestle. That's a possibility. We'll see, depending on what's going on with Storr, as well as Cassiope and Mason Paris, I think, would be the biggest one here. Now, the last time, what happened? How did Michigan end up beating the Hawkeyes in the this very close scoring duel. Micic won, Pantelio won, Amin beat Caleb Young. That was a big win. Abinator won, as well as Kuhn beating Stoll, which was one of the biggest matches there. Of course, Iowa still had a couple big wins there, but those wins propelled Iowa to Michigan to a victory. In the last match, which I don't know which one of these, as a Hawkeye fan, you're looking most forward to, or because I think Oklahoma State was probably one of the most upsetting losses recently, just because Iowa got kind of stumped at Oklahoma State, but this time they're at Iowa, and it's going to be a great match because this match goes, this is one of the longest traditions, longest histories of wrestling duels is between Iowa and Oklahoma State. Last time they were number 3 and number 2. This time Oklahoma State is a little bit further down in the rankings, but Iowa is at that number 1. We could see the Spencer Lee versus Nick Piccinini, another rematch between these two. Of course, last year Pitch rocked Spencer Lee, and that was a big upset for him in a huge match whenever he pinned him. We could see Lugo versus Llewellyn, as well as Warner versus Gear. Last time, like I said, Spencer Lee, that upset, losing, as well as the Fix versus DeSanto match. What a big one. We won't see that this year, of course, because Oklahoma State has a couple of those guys out on Olympic red shirts. But that is the 2020 Iowa Revenge Tour. Please let me know, what do you think about this? Did you even realize that Iowa had lost to these 4 teams, that these were the last 4 teams Iowa's lost to, and could they beat them this year? I think there's a very good shot that Iowa wins every single one of these matches.